Welcome to our lesson on midpoints. So let's start off with making a few connections. So what is in the middle of 12 and 24? Okay, hit pause, do this problem real quick, find the middle of 12 and 24. Okay, so you found the middle, and you probably found that the answer was 18, and you'd be correct. There's multiple ways that you may have done this. Okay? Maybe you added and divided it by 2. Okay? So 12 plus 24 is 36. Divide by 2, and you found 18. Perhaps you made a number line. 12, 24. Well, my number 9 is not even, but all the numbers are there. 15, 18. And then you counted them. So you went 1 this way, 1 this way, this way. And then you found the center. Or maybe you said 12 and 24. Well, that's 12. So to get to the middle, I go 6. There's a dozen of ways that you could have done it, and there's a dozen correct ways to do it. Okay? I just want you guys thinking about how to find middles, because today we're talking about midpoints. Okay? So if I want to find the midpoint of the points 3, 7, and 12, -5, midpoint, think middle, and middle leads me to think of averages. Midpoint, middle, average. And we know finding averages means we add and divide by 2. But how do I add coordinate points? Well, we're going to add the x values and add the y values. So let's average our x values. So our x values are 3 and 12. So add and then divide by 2. 3 plus 12 is 15 divided by 2, 7.5. And then add the y values. 7 plus -5 divided by 2. 7 plus -5 is the same to 7 minus 5. So 7 minus 5 is 2. I still divide by 2. And 2 divided by 2 is 1. So now I have the average of my x, the average of my y. You put them together and that's your midpoint. So we can use a formula to find our midpoint, averages in other words. We could also use a graph. So if I want to find the midpoint of a segment, given these endpoints, -3, 4, and 5, -6, I've already plotted these points on this. That way you can use them, because I understand that writing these out yourself with without grid paper would be a little bit more difficult. So I plotted the points on here. We still want to find the middles. So I am going to go ahead and I'm going to count the boxes. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there are 10 boxes going up and down. So half of that, or the middle, would be 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to draw a line there at 5 where the middle is. And I'm going to do the same thing going sideways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there are 8 boxes going sideways. So the middle of that would be 4 boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that there would create our midpoint. And And then we would list that as a coordinate point. 1, comma, negative 1. Okay. So now we found a midpoint using a formula, and we've also done it on a graph. We can also find midpoints from a table. So here I have two endpoints, negative 7, comma, negative 4, and negative 1, comma, 12. And we want to find the midpoint. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to make myself a table. And when I put these points in the table, I'm going to leave a space in the middle. Here's why. Midpoints are in between the endpoints. They should be in the middle of it. They shouldn't be outside. So I'm going to go E, M, E. Okay. EME for end, middle, end. These are endpoints. So I want to put these on the spots that have end with them. Now I'm going to find the middle of them. So from negative 7 to negative 1, that's adding 6 units. So to get to the middle of that, I would want to add 3. Negative 7 plus 3, negative 4. And do the same thing with the y's. So negative 4 to 12 is plus 16. So to get to the middle or halfway, I would want to add 8. Negative 4 plus 8, positive 4. And so now we see our midpoint right there in the middle. Negative 4, comma, 4. That would be our midpoint. Okay, here's the problem. You try this one. Find the midpoint. So I've given you the points negative 2, comma 3, and 4, comma 7. You can use the formula, you could utilize the graph that's there, or you could create a table. But go ahead, hit pause, and try this on your own. I'll come back with the answer. Okay, so you've done the work, you've tried it on your own. Let's check it. Okay, so here's the answer. 1, comma 5. If you did not get 1, comma 5, make sure you ask some questions. If you did get 1, comma 5, you're on the right track. Congratulations, you're doing well. Now we're going to switch. Instead of finding a midpoint, what if I wanted to find an endpoint? So here's the graph, okay? And it says I have an endpoint at 3, 7. So I'm going to label this with an E. And a midpoint at 1, 4. He's going to get the M. Now an endpoint would not make sense to put out here because our midpoint is not between those 2 points. The endpoint that's missing needs to be somewhere out here. So what I am going to do, I'm going to count the boxes. So I go from endpoint to midpoint, I go down 3, left 2. So to get to the other side, I need to repeat that. Down 3, left 2. And that would make my other endpoint. Okay. So this endpoint is negative 1, comma 1. Okay. What if I'm trying to find a missing endpoint though, and I don't have a coordinate plane? We could use a table again. So draw my table. I'm going to label E, M, E for endpoint, midpoint, endpoint. Put the endpoint in, and then put my midpoint in. Now, remember, everything has to keep moving the same way along. So from -4 to -9, that's -5. So to get to the other side, I need to go -5 again. -9 minus 5 is -14. And do the same thing for y. So -2 to 8 is +10. So I'm going to do it again to get to the other end. 8 plus 10 is 18. So there we have our endpoint. -14, comma, 18. Okay, here's one for you to try. Find the missing endpoint. Okay? Use the graph or create a table. All right, so you've done the work. You're ready to check your answer. 3, comma, -3 would be the missing endpoint. If you got it, fantastic. Great job. If not, ask some questions. Let's work together. So that brings us to the end of our lesson and our examples. Some things to remember. 1, you can always use the formula. Add the x's and divide by 2. Add the y's and divide by 2. But that's to find the midpoint. This does not find an endpoint. Okay? So this will find midpoint. Okay? You could also use a graph for either of them to find a midpoint or an endpoint. You can use a table to find a midpoint or endpoint. But whatever way you do this, make sure you label your endpoints and midpoints. It's very easy to get them confused, so label those endpoints and midpoints. And don't forget, you can always go back and rewatch some examples when you find out which way works best for you. Other than that, it's time to practice. Go work on your homework.